Hi, and welcome back to a new episode of Miranda's massive pile of books that just keeps growing without me noticing. Hey, I'm Miranda, and today I'm going to be taking you through all of my 2020 reading statistics. Now that the year is over, the new year's come in, I finally feel like I can reflect. I'm going to look at the graphs. You can't look at the graphs because I still don't know how to insert photos into a video. I'll just read them out to you and you can imagine them in your head. I'm getting these stats from a multitude of different places. I logged my reading on 3 different things last year, which was a bit excessive, but yeah, so I use Goodreads, but I also am transferring all my kind of usage of Goodreads onto the Storygraph instead, which is great. It's a great website, I love it. And their kind of stats breakdown is a lot more detailed than Goodreads, so I'm using them for a lot of these, but also I'm using my own reading spreadsheet that I used for most of this year. I use the spreadsheet from the channel Porcelain Pages that she makes every year. It's great. I don't know how to use spreadsheets, so like how to make them, so I just nab hers because it's wonderful. So in 2020 I read more books than I have in any other year, apart from maybe when I was, small and read dozens of books all the time, but I didn't keep track of those, obviously. I read 78 books, mostly across the kind of summer, because I had nothing to do. Obviously, I think this is the case for lots of people, that reading was kind of, one of the things that we could do. Obviously, everyone copes differently, so I know that lots of people were distracted from reading by, the shit show that was 2020, so that is totally fair enough. But for me, it actually turned out to be a really great reading year. So yeah, 78 books. I also DNF'd 2 books, which were The Other Americans by Layla Lalami and Brick Lane by Monica Ali, because I just wasn't enjoying them. So according to the Storygraph, I read 24,236 pages over my 78 books, which was quite a lot. And the amount of books that I was reading peaked in July, which is not surprising because that was the month that I did the reading rush, and I read 6 books in a week. I read 3 books in January, 4 books in February, 4 books in March, 6 books in April, 7 books in May, 6 books in June, 12 books in July, and then back down to 10 books in August, 7 books in September, 5 books in October, and 7 books in November, and December as well, 7 books. So it kind of went up and down a lot. Over the summer was also when I didn't have any university work to do, so that's also why I read quite a lot in there. The month when I read the most pages was also July, and that was 3,491 pages in a month, which is pretty mind-boggling, to be honest. I also read 9 audiobooks, which is 63 hours in total. I mostly read books that are between 300 and 399 pages long, with my average being 308 pages. The shortest book I read was A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid, which is 81 pages, and the longest one was The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, which was 748 pages. The most popular book on Goodreads by number of ratings that I read this year was Fahrenheit 451, which has about 3 million ratings, literally. And the least popular was one I read near the beginning of the year, which is also Georgiana by my granny, which only 7 other people have shelved. The highest rated on Goodreads is Becoming, with a 4.5 star average, which is highly deserved because it's wonderful. My average rating was apparently 3.86, although there are lots of books that I didn't rate for many different reasons, so I don't put that much stock by that, but that's what that is. 73% of the books that I read this year I read in paperback, which is not surprising because that's the format that I prefer. I read 12% of my books on audiobook, which is actually a big increase from what I've read before. I have discovered this amazing app called BorrowBox, which lets you use your library card to borrow audiobooks and ebooks kind of through the app, but from your local library, which is fantastic. And I love listening to non-fiction on audio, so I've been doing that a lot more this year. And then I read 9% in hardback and ebook respectively, so each of those were 9%. Storygraph does this really cool thing where it tells you how, like, what mood the books that you're reading are classed as, because it recommends you books based on the mood. So I read 41 reflective books, 33 emotional books, 29 dark books, who's surprised, 21 mysterious books, and 20 challenging books. That's almost 3/4 of my books in those like categories. And then I only read one relaxing book. I don't really read, well, obviously I don't read books that are described as relaxing, inspiring, light-hearted, hopeful. Yeah, those are my least read categories on this. So stats for genre I'm taking from my spreadsheet because they're kind of what I class them as opposed to what any other website classed them as. So my most read genre was literary fiction, or what I classed as literary fiction, which doesn't really mean anything, which was 27.5% of my reading. And then it was historical fiction, which was 21.3%. Then it's fantasy, memoir and non-fiction are all joint with 6.3% of my reading, which is 5 books. Then classics and poetry are joined with 5% of my reading, which is 4 books. Then I read 3 books classed as sci-fi, 3 collections of short stories, 2 crime books, 2 collections of essays, 1 thriller and 1 romance. Oh, and 1 play as well. 93.8% of the books that I read this year I classed as adult, and 6.3% were YA, which is, I mean, I think that's fine. I prefer adult books to YA, that's just my personal preference. I like looking at when the books that I read are published. I think that's really interesting. So most of the books I read, which, so 40, which is over half, I read were published between 2016 and 2019. Which is fair enough. Like I mostly read new releases. Only 5 books that I read last year were actually published last year. 9 were published between 2011 and 2015, 4 between 2006 and 2010, 5 in the 90s, 5 in the 80s, and 3 between 2000 and 2005, 2 in the 70s, 2 in the 50s, 1 in the 30s, and then 4 books were pre-1920s. This is the bit I find most interesting, which is the author kind of statistics, because I don't know, I like thinking about who the authors are that I'm reading and where they come from. It's interesting to me to look at the kinds of books that I'm reading, but also kind of more interesting to see who is behind those books and whether that informs the kind of books that they are. Last year, 77.2% of the books that I read, which is 61, were written by female authors, which is, again, not surprising to me. Like, I mostly read female authors. They're just the kind of books that I gravitate towards. 19% were written by men, which is 15 books, and then 3.8%, which is 3 books, were written by non-binary authors. And 2 of those were Akwaeke Emezi, because, yeah, I love their writing. I would quite like to read more non-binary authors, and more transgender authors as well, generally, which is something that I haven't documented here, but I don't think, apart from any of the non-binary authors I read, I don't think I read any books from trans authors. So yeah, that's something that I definitely want to change. One thing I am quite proud of this year is I read lots of books from different countries, like not loads, but more than I have before, partly because of my degree. It's not great still, but it's an improvement on what I've read before. Having said that, the country that I did read the most from this year was the UK, which was 38% of my readings, which is 30 books, followed by the US, which is 27% of my reading last year. I mean, I do love British literature, and I love reading about experiences of people in other countries, but also in the country that I live in. So, and obviously those countries they do dominate the publishing world, so that's not surprising, but I do want to read more globally. So following that, I read 5 books from Nigerian authors, 4 books from Japanese authors, 3 books from Irish authors, 2 books from Indian authors, and 2 books from French authors. And then the rest of these countries I read one book from. So that's Guatemala, Belgium, Australia, Germany, Ghana, Ethiopia, Iceland, Indonesia, Jamaica, Iran, and Poland. So yeah, it's okay. One thing I am proud of that I achieved was reading an exact 50-50 split between white authors and authors of colour. So that was something that I committed to in the middle of the year because I hadn't been reading that many books from authors of colour up to that point. So I really made that like a commitment that I wanted to fulfill, and I did. Last year I read 12 books in translation, which is 15% of my reading, which isn't loads, but it is, I suppose it's one a month, which isn't terrible, so I'll take it. So on to my goals for 2021 in terms of reading. I really want to again maintain the 50-50 split between people of colour and white authors for across the year, if not make it, you know, more authors of colour. That's like the main thing that I will definitely stick to. I would like to read more translated books and more books from different continents as well, but my main goal for 2021 is to not buy any books, which is pretty extreme, at least for the first 6 months. So I'm kind of accepting that if I'm only reading from my current physical TBR and the books and trying to get through that, then I'm kind of like, I'm gonna cut myself a bit of slack, saying, you know, and not make reading from lots of different continents and lots of authors in translation like a certain number that I need to get to. There are so many books that I've had for ages and I really want to read, I'm really excited about, but I keep getting distracted from them by new books, and that's fine. Like, new books is great. I love new books, I love buying books, but it's getting a bit out of hand, and yeah, stopping buying books is the best way that I can think to control that. I'm still gonna borrow books from the library. The library at university is really great, so I'm gonna try and borrow books from there as much as possible, but also use BorrowBox for ebooks and audiobooks, for if there are any books that I'm like desperate to read and I don't have. Also, I'm gonna allow myself to be gifted books. So it's, you know, it's my birthday in March, like I'm not gonna say people can't give me books, because books are like my favourite gift to receive. There's been a couple of times where I say to my boyfriend, oh, can you like buy me this book, because I don't want to be buying books at the moment, but also I really want that, and then I'll give you the money but I can't buy it myself. That's not gonna happen. None of that. No cheating. No buying books, no obtaining books from anyone, follow this, apart from gifts. I'm going to continue to be aware of how many translated books I read and where the authors of the books that I'm reading are from, in the similar kind of way that I was this year, because, you know, I really like reading translated fiction and I really like reading fiction and books generally from other places. Otherwise, I'm just going to try and get through as much of my physical TBR as I can, because she's large and overwhelming and I need to stop buying books. So yeah, I've set my Goodreads goal this year for 52, which is kind of normal I do, just because who knows what's going to happen. I'm not going to pressure myself, you know, to read as many books as I did last year, because like I said, who knows what's going to happen. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. My best books of 2020 will be coming up soon, very soon. I'm going to film it right now. But until then, I hope you have a good day and I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you soon.